Welcome, everybody. My name is Nicholas Silberg. I'm the chair of the Department of Fine Arts, Humanities, and Wellness, and I've had the pleasure of teaching the thesis course this past fall with these lovely ladies you see up on stage. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to have an artist talk. Each artist in front of you will be able to get up and talk a little bit about their work and how they got there. And then we will have a question and answer session at the end of the presentations, and then we'll file into the gallery for the opening reception. So without further ado, since I know we're running just a little behind, I would like to introduce to you Margie Watson.
Good evening, everyone. How are you guys doing tonight or today? All right. Let's see. All right. I want to start off my presentation by giving you guys a small overview or a backstory to my thesis. All right. Oh, sorry. All right. So for me, my thesis is about my personal story and some of the things that I have experienced within my life pertaining to trauma, just mental illness, and the interactions I've had with my family. And I thought this topic would be very important because I think that a lot of us can relate to these issues. I'm talking about trauma, mental illness, abandonment, and alcohol abuse. So my intentions is that you guys can relate to them and see yourself within these portraits, these paintings that I've created, and hopefully it will spark a conversation where you guys can talk about these issues and hopefully come up with solutions to these issues. And also, these pictures are family photographs, so this, if you guys were wondering what they were. All right. So here in the program, we get to partake in certain classes or courses. And here in my undergrad, I was able to take Painting 1 courses. And these paintings are some of the paintings that I completed during that time in that class. The painting over to the left, or your left, is entitled Baby Years, and it's something I completed in 2016. It is a self-portrait, and here I was interested in exploring complementary colors, orange and blue, and I was also interested in exploring how organic and geometric shapes could work together in one composition. To the right is another piece that I completed in Painting 1, and it's untitled, and again I'm working with complementary colors and the use of organic to geometric shapes in one composition. You'll see this picture repeated. It's actually in my thesis show, so hopefully you guys will see the progression, and taking this course has actually helped me to develop my current work, so just keep that in mind. Another course that I was able to take here in the program is Life Studio. So in this course, we're drawing from observations, the human body, and we're doing portraits, and we're working with models. So it's a bit different from working from a photograph. We're learning actually how the body works and how joints work and how they move, and it helps us to understand how to actually paint and draw these and give it value, and let's see, and these are just some of the pieces that I was able to work on. And again, this course you'll definitely see how it helped me to develop my thesis. All right, so let's get into some of my influence. So one of my influences is Caravaggio. He's an Italian Renaissance painter. He's very famous for creating these tabloids of scenes of people interacting with each other, and like they're in the middle of doing something. It's really interesting. And he's actually noted for his use of the technique of chiaroscuro, which he's focusing on the light and dark, extreme light and dark, and how you create these forms using that technique. So he was one of my influence, and you'll see later on when I show you some of my pieces exactly how he influenced my pieces. And here's an example. I'm sorry. Okay, here's an example. The piece on the left is actually one of my pieces that's in the show. It's a detail shot, and it's called I Can Wash Off Some of the Craziness. And the piece on the right is a piece by Caravaggio. And so I put the two next to each other so you can kind of see the influence. So, like I said, the chiaroscuro, that technique I actually try to accomplish within my body of work. And hopefully you guys will see that. You see more of it. All right, another influence of mine is Frida Kahlo. I know everybody's probably really familiar with her. Okay, she is a surrealist painter. I was influenced by her because she does these self-portraits, and she usually talks about her life and her personal experiences with trauma, and she uses a lot of objects and objects within her pieces to show symbolism that represent some of those experiences in her life. So I too did that. And the piece on your left, which is called Desperate to Save Oneself, I Should Have Been Protected, is a self-portrait of myself. And I'm just talking about some of the personal experiences that I've had having to let go of certain relationships within my life because it was causing me hurt and pain within. So that's my inspiration. All right. And one of my other inspiration is Dr. Jamel Torres, sitting in the audience with us. He is a professor here at Savannah State University in the Africana Studies program. And I actually had the privilege last semester of sitting down with him and having an interview with him, and just he gave me a lot of vital information when it came to the African American culture. The African American community, and just our struggle with trauma and mental illness and the negative stigma that comes along with those topics. And I learned a lot of things actually sitting down and talking with him, but I'll name one major thing. He talked about relating the trauma and the mental illness and abuse, the things that we face currently, back to slavery. And I thought it was interesting. Like they've currently found that a lot of the things we deal with is embedded within our DNA, and it traces back to slavery. So I think that's a great thing to note, because it makes us all connect. We all come from that same place, and we should be able to relate with each other when it comes to those topics. So. All right, so this piece is actually untitled. This is one of the pieces I actually started with when I began my thesis. And this is nothing like what I normally do. I normally always do portraits, so I think I got a bit scared in the beginning. But I painted this scenery of random objects that all were symbolic to me, and they meant something. But I later went back and used some of these objects within the portraits to continue the symbolism. So that's just a starting point. And that's the process. You have some process shots of me working. The way I painted, I would set up numerous paintings within a circle, and I would work on them at one time. so that I could have a cohesive body of work. I didn't want for my brush strokes to change. Sometimes if you work on a painting one day and then come back the next day, so I would work on them periodically together. So, all right, so one of my pieces, this is a self-portrait of me. It's called "And Her Not Even Acknowledge Me." And so in this piece, it's a self-portrait of myself as a child. And you can reference my age just based on my height in reference to the doorknob. So you can tell I was pretty young. And this piece is just talking about my personal struggle of just not really having a true maternal connection and having to self-aid myself in a lot of ways. So I'm dressed in the nurse uniform, and I have the stethoscope, and I'm listening to my own personal heartbeat. And this piece can be taken one or two ways, because if you look at the hand is a little bit more mature than the body. And so you can read it as either me either having to grow up a little bit quicker because I didn't really have that connection, that maternal connection, or you can read it as the adult me having to self-aid the inner child. So that's what that piece is talking about. And it also talks about trauma. One thing that reoccurs throughout my painting is a scar that is located on the left side of my face. So that just symbolizes a traumatic experience within my life, and you'll see that reoccur throughout a lot of my pieces. Okay, and finally, another piece that's included is called "I Can Wash Off the Craziness." And this piece is actually a portrait of me and my father, and it just talks about our current relationship. Last year, my father was diagnosed with dementia, and it can be considered a type of mental illness because it deals with the mind. But right here, I just captured a moment with me and him, and I use a lot of symbolism. I don't know if anybody knows anything about people who have dementia, but a lot of times they can get agitated very easily. And one of the ways that I work with my dad is through singing. That's a connection that we have. So a lot of times I have to sing to him in order to get him to calm down, and we can cooperate. So that's what this piece is talking about. And also the positioning of the body is symbolic. I am in the front. I'm in front of him. It shows the relationship. I now am responsible for him. I am responsible for making sure he is taken care of. I have to protect him. And that just kind of reverses the role of father to daughter. So that, and then also the blackberries in his shirt is also related to people who suffer with dementia. It's actually a fruit that's good for the mind. So the blackberries on his shirt and the blackberry jars in the back. And then also I am wearing white, which is symbolic for God is with you. So throughout all of my experiences, I believe that God has always been with me. So, and that's it.
Thank you, Margie. Next up, we have Mayia Ellick. Excuse me. Wonderful to have you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mayia Ellick. I'm a senior here at Savannah State University, and I'm a visual arts major, of course. And here is my thesis. To start off, there's a picture of a clay sculpture that I created in the sculpture, and it shows a woman's form, which is something that I started to notice that I found interesting in my work. And as you can see, it's called Mother Nature is of a tree trunk, but you see a woman's form. also was in a life drawing class, and this was my first attempt at painting. I believe I did a good job, but this is also showing a form that I end up loving to, put together. It is of a full person, of course, and yeah. This is one of my inspirations, Ansel Adams. I really like his work because when people normally think about landscape and nature, they usually fall in love with the colors of the image. But this image, of course, it's in black and white, and yet you can see that it's still breathtaking. It's still something that you want to see. So that is one of the reasons why I want to do landscape. Also, that image was in film photography. So I did take a course in film photography, and it was not my best subject. I'm the type of person who needs instant gratification. So seeing that when you take these type of pictures, they have to be developed before you can see if it's like a good picture, to see if it's blurry or if anything's wrong with it. And so I did not like that course. But the course that I did enjoy was digital photography. Here are a few landscapes that I took around Savannah. I actually took these on campus, and it's the start of my love for photography. Is where I learned how to use the camera professionally instead of being an amateur and using basically automatic settings. So this is when I finally learned how to really work my camera. Also, I am in an organization called Savannah Savages Incorporated. These two are models that are in the organization. There's Jackie Drake and Bria Dix. One was Miss Black and Platinum, and the other was a secretary. These pictures are for their portfolio as well as advertisement on social medias. This image here is the first day of spring 2017. This is just an image that I took outside of my house. It was one of the first flowers that bloomed, and I thought it was a nice picture. So here are two more inspirations, Miss Renee Cox and Miss Carla Williams. I really love their photography because they point out gender roles. They point out specifically body images and how the body is portrayed. As you can see, Miss Renee Cox, she has the big breasts and the butt to show that, like, that's something that everyone wants, but that's not how life goes. And I feel like she's trying to show that it's trying to mock it at the same time as embrace it, because as a black woman, we are all curvy and have those things. So she wants people to not feel ashamed of it. As well as Miss Carla Williams, she's showing a self-portrait, and she doesn't want people to be ashamed of their body, ashamed of their weight, ashamed of their size. And that's what got me into working on my own as far as body images and body goals. This is Hope, to start a series of her becoming herself, being more loving of her body and loving of her nakedness. This was her first naked shoot or nude shoot. She specifically didn't want me to edit her scar because that was part of her story. She wanted people to know her story, know her self-worth, and know that she's not ashamed of herself personally. This is another image of her. And again, with the same story of self-love, here is an image of Lori. And she was still modest as far as doing the new shoot, but she did want to show that she isn't ashamed, and she's starting to love herself, even though, you know, it takes time, especially as a dark-skinned woman. And here is an image of what I call 1 + 1 equals 3. It's an image of a boyfriend and girlfriend and their unborn baby. And I really like this image because just the way that they hold each other, it shows that how much they embrace each other and how much they love each other. And I feel like even though the child isn't being shown or isn't really seen, it shows that that love is going to be brought down to that child and she's going to be taken care of. So that's the thing that I like. And this is also one of the first black and white images that I've created. And that brings me to my own child. On July 5th, I had my daughter, and she became my muse for everything. So this is dedicated to her. I started off by taking this picture. It's called Protected. It's of her and her father. Surprisingly, I didn't expect for this image to get so much attention, but I posted it on social media and everybody freaked out and loved it. So this is one of my favorite pictures. Again, this is her at 6 months. And here on the left is her at 3 months, and the other one is at a year old. And she became my inspiration for my thesis topic. My mother took this picture of me breastfeeding and posted it on her page, and she was contacted by a group who basically loved the image and loved the story that was being told. Basically, my mom breastfed me, and I breastfed my child. And of course, I've learned everything that I know from her. So when they got a hold of that story, they wanted to publicly put that out and let people know that even though it's looked down upon, it's still something that we should do, something that is necessary for your child. I started getting in Facebook groups of a full community of black women who are trying to support other black women into breastfeeding and trying to tell them that it's okay, it's nothing to be ashamed of, it's not taboo anymore, it shouldn't be destigmatized, it should be normalized. And that is what got me to my topic, because if you all aren't aware, August is Breastfeeding Awareness Month, and at the end of August is Black Breastfeeding Awareness Week. And if there's a week just for the black community, then that means that there is something that needs to be told. So that is what got me into my thesis. Here are 3 images of black breastfeeding mothers. The one to the far left is called Organics 2, and that is of a mom breastfeeding in public, and of course unashamed, not worrying about eyes wandering or people looking at her disgustingly or whatever the case may be, just feeding her child, making sure her child is taken care of. The same in the middle, that's Untitled, and the last one, Undeniable Joy, that was a candid image that I shot of a woman actually at a nurse-a-thon full of moms breastfeeding their child and getting information and stuff like that. So that is my thesis, and that's what I focus on.
Thank you very much, Maya. Next we have Sharon Ray.
Good evening, everyone. I am Sharon Ray. I am a graduating senior, and moving forward, I will be talking about my art. So, a little bit of information about myself. I am a painter. My artwork is expressive, not objective, and abstract. And my art includes, when I create my art, I include color, form, and texture. And whenever I'm painting, whenever I'm painting, it's very process oriented with all the layers that I incorporate. And I'm from Cordell, Georgia. Any 229ers? Oh, okay. All right, so one of the art movements that inspires my work is abstract expressionism. And here is a quote from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And here it describes it as being a term applied to a movement in American painting that flourished in New York City after World War II. It's sometimes referred to as the New York School, or more narrowly, as action painting. The varied work produced by the abstract expressionists resists definition as a cohesive style. Instead, these artists shared an interest of using abstraction to convey strong emotional or expressive content. So abstract art is basically about using your action painting, and you're basically taking the easel or the canvas off of the easel, which is the more traditional way you paint, and instead you're just putting it on the floor and you're making these gestural strokes. One of my favorite artists who inspires me happens to make art from this movement, and it's Rothko. He's an American painter, and here is one of his pieces. And a common theme with artists from the abstract expressionist movement is that their paintings tend to be very large scale, and in this particular image there's a human figure to kind of give you a reference of how tall these paintings are. The one closest to us is 8 feet, 8 by 9 feet tall, so they're pretty large scale. And I was very inspired by this movement and just the warm colors, and I'm gonna back step a little bit. So what I enjoy about the visual art program here at Savannah State is that I'm able to dibble and dabble in different mediums. And one of the first studio courses that I took here was printmaking, and kind of channeling my inspiration from Rothko and abstract expressionism. Here are my monoprints. So I have a warm analogous color scheme here. And this is a screenshot from my website, sharonaray.com. All right, the next course that influenced my artwork would be sculpture. As I mentioned before, whenever I'm painting, I enjoy incorporating color and form and texture. And I use a lot of mixed materials to make my art. And with this particular project, the same follows. Here's a clay sculpture, and it's created with fibers sewn throughout it. So as I was sculpting the clay and carving it with the reductive method, I made sure to insert holes so I could go back in and add more mixed media along with it. And this is on my website as well. Painting. This is where I really began to find my voice and articulate myself as an artist. This was the medium that was like, aha. So these are from the painting, or these paintings are what I made this year. And I further explore color, texture, and form. I'm exploring more mixed media materials, and triple triptych, the smaller 9 pieces to the left. These pieces were recently featured in the Jepson exhibition back in September in the FAAA Small Works exhibit. They were up for a month at the Jepson. And to the left, I have another painting here where I use mixed media, acrylic oil, and some beading as well, and even some glue. So just mixing my paint, combining it with different materials to get the textures that you see. My next artist that inspires my work is Ed Clark. So as I mentioned with abstract expressionists, he's a second generation abstract expressionist painter. And again, with the idea of taking the canvas off of the easel and just action painting, creating painting on the floor. Here, in order to get, like in the finished piece here, in order to get the movement of the paint across the canvas, he uses a janitorial broom to get his large brush strokes. And again, like with Rothko, like Ed Clark, he's painting on these large canvases. And to the right here, I was photographed. I went up to go view his work in person at the Jack Tilton Gallery in Manhattan. So this is one of Ed Clark's paintings. Next is Peter Anton. He's another artist that inspires me, and he basically he sculpts and paints desserts, and they're very hyper realistic. And he uses a lot of mixed media as well. And to give you an idea of scale, here he's in one of the photos. And here's another image of Peter Anton's work. And to my right is an image of my paintings to give you an idea of how I like to depict these abstracted textures of dessert. Next artist that inspires me is Sarah Ann. She photographs desserts, and she also pays an homage to artists. In this instance, she's giving an homage to abstract expressionist artists. To the left, I showed you guys the large-scale painting of Rothko, and here she's done it photographing cake. And then to the left, Jackson Pollock. He's another abstract expressionist painter, and he's known for action. So there's that historical reference. And my thesis. So for my thesis, I was intrigued with depicting the emotional connection that humans have to desserts. So here are some detailed shots of my pieces that are in tonight's show. And just to give you an example of how I'm using these mixed media materials to get these abstracted textures of desserts. And lastly, I'm excited to announce that I've recently been accepted to showcase my artwork during Miami Art Week next month. So I'll be down in Miami showcasing another body of work there. So I'm excited about that. Thank you. And that concludes my presentation. And next we'll have Miss Kayla Jefferson.
Thank you, Sharana. Next we have Kayla Jefferson.
Good evening. I'm Kayla Jefferson, and I'm going to be talking to you about my thesis. when I first got here, I was not really sure of what I wanted to do with my college career. But then I chose, I guess, art as my degree. And one of my first classes I took was painting one. Um, I I have never painted like a picture in my life, so this is one of the pieces that I first created, where I pretty much just use the shapes and colors and I don't know, just like different techniques to like just create this piece. Uh, I also had never really researched any different artists, but Jackson Pollock, he stood out to me just because of his way of painting and creating his art. His canvases were pretty like large, and he used these buckets of paint, and he would just like use his body strength and just throw the paint onto the canvas, and I thought that was very interesting. So I caught myself trying to, I guess, experiment with that, but my canvas was a lot smaller and it didn't work very well. So I ended up using just a paint spatula and just creating the strokes, and this is what I came up with. And I'm very happy with it though. I also had the opportunity of taking photo one, which was working with film. I actually enjoyed that process a lot more than working with digital. I guess because you get to actually, I guess, develop the film and like use the chemicals to develop. This one is actually a digital picture, but I found it pretty successful. So yeah, pretty much. I believe this piece came after not photography, painting two, I think. Who was I looking at? I think I was looking at Georgia O'Keeffe at this point, where she paints these like close-up pictures of flowers that people were like saying that were actually vaginas, but she argued them down that they weren't, and they were just flowers. So so I decided, I thought it was cool. I felt like it was like kind of like rebellious, I don't know, some kind of way. So I experimented with that, and this is what I came up with. These two pieces were created in printmaking one with Professor Silberg. We were using linoleum. I guess it's like a board or something. It's like rubber material, and you carve into it to create your print. Back to Georgia O'Keeffe. These are what I came up with. I also wanted to experiment with like colors, and I guess also like gender roles. I was also thinking about. So you have your pink, and then you have your blue for women and male, and in the middle you have your purple, I guess, for transgenders maybe. So there you are. And then still exploring the female body. This is what I came up with. Also, I started having a thing for shapes, and I didn't like to use the entire, I guess, paper. I wanted to create my own, I guess. I don't know what you say. But anywho, yeah, so shapes and patterns is where I went with this one here. And throughout my, I guess, printmaking classes, I was creating a lot of pictures of, I guess, vaginas and the female body. And everyone asked me, well, why don't you do a penis? So I kind of experimented with that, and this is what I came up with. I didn't want it to be like so like in your face, so I made it kind of, did it with color and try to make it cute. And then so I also added the bikini to keep it, you know, feminine, because I'm a woman, and yeah. This gets into my thesis. This is one piece that I created this year, and I wanted to talk about I guess slut shaming, and how sometimes women are like shamed upon because of the way they dress or how they carry themselves. So this piece it's untitled, but it's pretty much like I don't know. I'm covering like, you know, her vagina area where that, you know, people don't want to see with the box. And I'm calling her pretty much a slut. And then the drippings pretty much represent, you know, ejaculation from a male, from I guess how they get off from seeing a female body, and they say it's distracting. So yeah. This is from Printmaking 2. This is called a collograph. A collograph is where you use a cardboard and you add different mediums as like gloss medium, matte medium. I added some lace to mine to give it some texture. So I cut it out in the shape of a butterfly, and I just added those mediums there to it. And I would have to say that I actually hated this process, and I told myself I would never do it again. But I ended up doing 51 more of these. By yeah, long nights, and yeah, they all were done by hand. So I'm pretty tired from that. This goes back to my theme of slut shaming and how women are shamed upon by the way they dress. So this is my model. She's at work. This is, I guess, one place where this can happen, depending on how a female is dressed. I guess what I'm going for here is it shouldn't matter how she's dressed, because I mean she's still getting her work done, so it shouldn't matter how she's dressed. And what I've done here is I labeled her leg by different lengths of a skirt. But I use positive words, because sometimes if you have a short skirt on, you might be called a whore or a slut or other words of thought. But I wanted to, I guess, leave my viewer thinking what I'm thinking. Like the way she's dressed doesn't determine like who she is. So that's what I'm going for here. And that's pretty short and simple. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. Well, that concludes our presentations. I hope you will join us in the gallery, which I'm pretty expecting every one of you to join us in the gallery to actually see the artwork in person. How about one more round of applause for our lovely ladies tonight? They worked really hard. Thank you very much for coming.